Excellent. Are we good? Excellent. So my microphone is red. Is that correct?
Yeah, that means
Good. Okay. Right. Welcome everyone to the Audit and Governance Committee meeting. Which, although we are in person, my understanding is that this is a consultation call, and we'll establish the detail of that in a second. So if we just cover off who is here and who is not first. So we have apologies, I think, from Hans Mundry and from Councillor Baker-Rogers. We also have apologies from Joe Reid. Joe Reid, unfortunately, is not able to continue on committee or in the role of vice chair. So Joe won't be attending today or in the future. And I don't know, Kevin, whether to shine the spotlight on you now or later. Let's do it now. So Kevin is here as one of our independent members. But it's the last time that he'll be here. And other people on committee or in attendance in whatever capacity, please jump in, but I'll start. So I can only speak for the last 2 or 3 years, Kevin, obviously, but I always look forward to your contribution. And when you're not making a contribution, I just wonder whether you're disconnected or something online, or you haven't heard the question. So my thanks to you for not only your support, but also the questions that you ask and the way that you ask them. I reflect on the meetings that you've contributed to, which you obviously contribute to every meeting, but you tend to ask questions that nobody else is asking, and that's the so your contribution isn't really measured in your 6 years as a committee member, or the fact that you've probably attended almost every meeting in that time. Your contribution is measured by the quality of the questions, the value of the insight. So you will be missed, I think. So on that point, I don't know whether anybody else who has known Kevin for even longer than I have would like to say something, or whether indeed, Kevin, you want to say something.
Oh, thanks very much, Chair, for your kind words. 6 years and a bit. It's been an interesting journey, starting from scratch in 2018. So I was part of that sort of finding our way, I suppose, journey, and we're still learning, I guess, and still developing as things change politically at the macro level. So yeah, been a good 6 years. Enjoyed it. Wish you all the best for the next period. I think it'll be really interesting. It's good to see that devolution will be back firmly on the political agenda, because it's been a tough few years, I think, for everybody at TFN in terms of that sort of reduction in grant and support, and I think I can probably say it now, in political will as well, from the centre. So I'm really pleased that we should be back centre of the agenda, really, for the North. It's really important.
Just responding on behalf of TFN, I think I've been here since 2020, which is probably only a relatively short period compared to yourself, Kevin. But I think what's really interesting is that when I came on board, Ian would talk to me about the various committee members, and he mentioned yourself as to the level of contribution you've made, and exactly what he said would happen, you've done, and you've left the committee in a better place than it was originally, in my perspective. You do ask challenging questions, which I think is exactly what we should be looking to try and get out, and it makes us a bit uncomfortable at times, and that's a good thing. So I think if we can continue in that vein for the next 6 years, if that's what's set aside for us, then that would be a wonderful legacy. But thank you.
Thanks, Paul. There was a collection. We did get something. It's too big for the room, so we'll have to sort that out afterwards. I don't know whether this is the most appropriate way of doing it or not, but Richard, can we just kick off with you and do a quick round around the room, just so that we can get comfortable with who's here, please.
Yeah, Chair. My name is Richard Thomas. Hello, Chair. My name is Richard Thomas, independent member. This will be my third meeting of the Audit Committee. My background is local government. I'm head of audit and risk for St Helens Council.
Daniel Watson, key audit partner with Forbes Mazars, the external auditor.
I'm Alex Hyman, Associate Director within RSM, so I provide the internal audit services.
Daniela Della-Chera-Smith, I'm the TFN Risk Manager.
Andrea Shepherd, Administrator for this meeting.
Morning, my name's Stephen Hipler. I'm the Head of HR for Transport for the North.
Kevin Brady, independent member.
Good morning everyone, my name is Stuart Green, here as an observer today, but due to step into Kevin's shoes for the next meeting. Pleased to meet you.
Morning, Charlie French. I'm Investment Planning Manager in the Strategic Rail team at Transport for the North.
Morning, I'm Lisa Pitt, the Management and Financial Accountant at Transport for the North.
I'm Deputy 151 when I'm not here. Paul Kelly, FD and Section 151 Officer.
And Julie Openshaw, good morning everybody, Head of Legal for TFN.
Grand, thank you. Super. So Stuart, I know you're observing, but consider yourself here, please. Right. Before we just canter through the minutes, can I just ask if there are any interests which anybody needs to declare in respect of their membership or their attendance? You okay? Good. Right. Minutes of the last meeting in July, which we did via Teams. Hopefully folk have had an opportunity to read them. I have. Thank you, Andrea, as always. If I just pick out some of the key topics, then maybe folk can stop me if they have any questions or concerns. There is quite an extensive narrative around Risk Register and the deep dive that we did on the TFN offer, which is also referenced in the quarterly operating report, but we'll sort of pick that up again, I guess, as part of that. It was a good discussion. We covered committee effectiveness, which is a topic which I guess we'll revisit today as well as part of the annual statement, and also skills and competency in a roundabout sort of way. Just a quick update, one of the things that I've been conscious of since I started on the committee is that we sometimes feel a little disconnected, in my view, from the wider board and from the chief exec. So part of overall committee effectiveness is just to cement the twice yearly engagement with the CEO so that we can get that direct engagement and input and feedback. So I had a meeting with Martin a few weeks ago Couple of things that Martin brought up that I'll share with you now, which I thought were quite important for us to reflect on, I guess. One was inclusivity and that sort of disconnected nature of how some residents of the region may feel at times. So just challenging us as a committee to make sure that we think about disconnected people, we think about inclusivity as part of our thinking on risk. And I didn't know, Daniela, whether that would be a topic for a future deep dive. Not necessarily a particular risk, but just thinking about how disconnectedness or inclusivity might feed across a broad range of risk. Maybe that's a good topic just to have a think about. The other point, and it's kind of and the sort of regional aspect as well. That was, I think Martin was very conscious that the emphasis can so easily be around centres of population and major infrastructure, and of course not everybody lives in a major centre, and not everybody has access to critical infrastructure or major infrastructure. The other point was the relevance question, I guess, which is again just to challenge ourselves on whatever topic it is that we're looking at. It's almost the so what question. So how is this, it might be a fantastically interesting topic, but how relevant is it to what TFN is trying to do? So it's good points to sort of keep written somewhere, just so that we refer back to them. Sorry for going on about that. We talked a little bit about the annual statement and the annual governance statement. We're going to talk about the process for that for the coming year later on. We had an update on internal audit, and we have one report at least to talk about from an internal audit perspective later on. Covered external audit and appointments. And that was pretty much it. Is everybody happy with the minutes?
Sorry, Chair, can I just say our firm name changed in June to Farvis Mazar, so the minutes could just be updated for that, if possible.
Was it a painless merger, or?
Yes.
Oh, you're on camera, you've got to say that. You've got to say that. Excellent. Right. So we did have talked a little bit about deep dive already, just in terms of a thought for the future, but we did have, as normal, risk register and a deep dive scheduled for today. They've been delayed potentially until December. I know we chatted a little bit about this, Paul, the other day. I just thought it might be worth just airing exactly where we think we are with risk and why we haven't brought that to this meeting and what our expectation is going forward.
Yeah, so the cycle of where we are in relation to risk reporting. So there was it's a cyclical piece that we take to board on a twice per year, every 6 months. So the corporate risk register that we took to the committee on the 19th of July last time we met, there was an expectation that there was a piece of work required post the 4th of July with the change of administration. So I think we acknowledge the fact that there needs to be an overhaul of risk as a consequence of the new government. I think we probably originally thought we might be able to get that done for this meeting, but actually in reality, because of the cycle of governance, in that we want to go through our own internal checks and balances first, and then that's both within functional areas and then within the operating board, and then we would come to A&G and then to board itself. So to allow it to be done on a structured and a structured basis, we targeted December. So that's the reason why the corporate risk register isn't here today. In relation to the deep dive, it's very fluid. You know, I mean, if someone asked me today, what are we submitting to the department in relation to a funding request, we don't know. It's emerging, so there's a requirement to do a spending review, but over what term and for what period does it start and end, we don't know at this stage. So there's so much uncertainty, we felt it would be more beneficial to defer the item until later in the year in relation to the deep dive on financial viability. So we'd be, I suppose, have better information to discuss with the board, to discuss with the committee.
Grant, thank you. Given the importance of the topic, does any members have any comment to make about where we think the organisation is in respect of risk, or where we think the committee is in respect of risk? Now might be an opportunity to raise that. Good, okay, thank you, Paul. I mentioned this to Daniela the other day, and again, it was something that Martin mentioned that is worth sharing. Martin has and he can speak for himself on this obviously, he views the way that risk is managed, I think, quite positively within the organisation, sees it as having evolved and progressed in a positive way over the recent period, which is, you know, that sort of came out of the conversation. I didn't prompt him to say that. He wasn't responding to a specific question, so it was interesting to hear that positive reflection from the Chief Exec on the management of risk as a process and structure. Worth sharing. The other point that I made to Martin, which is that risk only has meaning within the context of the objectives of the organisation, and what I was encouraging Martin to think about more was, over and above what we get with the quarterly operating report, what else can Martin or the board do to give us the context as a committee so that we can properly understand what's actually going on, what the thinking is behind decisions, where the organisation thinks it is in respect of opportunities, etc. So I will keep pressing that context point with him. I think it's really important. So, if we're okay to move on from risk, a nice segue into the quarterly operating report for April and June.
So, Charlie, should I just frame it for 1 second?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
So I think Charlie's here now. I think originally, Charlie, I think we suggested that you'd be here to talk about the report, but again, I think what Charlie probably will be able to do is to take a step back and frame the quarterly operating report process. It's back into this point about context, Graham, just so you can get a better feel for how we use it and how it fits in our governance structure. And then, so that's one key element of it. And then secondary, if you want, and if you like, we can drop into any of the specific items. But I think the key is the structure and the process and the robustness of it. That's the critical piece that I think I'd like the committee members to understand, and then to probe on some of the detail if required. Charlie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So, as we said this morning, you've got the Q1 report that covers the period from April to June. I stress it's a collective effort by the organisation to put this together. And it's very much designed to provide that snapshot of the key information relating to the business plan, key milestones. There's an awful lot of activity that sits underneath each of those, but the report aims to draw out the key highlights, really. give confidence as to what we're doing and how we're approaching it and where we're adding value as an organisation. You'll see that the Chief Exec summary at the start draws out some key highlights from the quarter. I said take those in the context that was pre-election. We've had a busy time since then, and we're almost at the end of Q2 now, so there's another report that's due to be written. One of the key things that you'll note is the change of format that is very much there to give a greater focus on those milestones and very much refine the report down. That includes the introduction of the RAG ratings, which are, I think I personally find those incredibly helpful for giving a very quick overview of how we're performing and where might need some attention or additional effort. I said it's a collective effort. You'll know I'm from the strategic rail team, so happy to take questions on any specifics on rail, but beyond that I may need to defer to colleagues, but yeah, happy to take any questions that you might have on the content and the structure.
Excellent, thank you. Right, colleagues, any questions or challenges on? Yes, go ahead, Chair.
Observation, Chair, if I may. My capacity as an observer.
Of course.
Rather like this report. Someone very new to the organisation, as Charlie. Thank you for your presentation of your report, Charlie. You know, nice snapshot. Really draws out those key highlights. The RAG rating of achievement or otherwise against the key milestones is for what it's worth, is not something that I see elsewhere. So it's nice and transparent, I think, in that respect. I do have a question, Chair, if I may, just regarding one of the points that's made regarding the resources that we have available to us. What is the resource that it puts a limit on what we can achieve? It mentions, well, we are currently, this is on page 18, the big page 18, we're currently limited by resources available. What specifically is the resource that's putting the limit on what we can achieve? Yeah, it's number 10. It's there on page 18. Yeah.
But that relates
By way of clarification then, this is a money issue, excuse me, a money issue rather than our ability to recruit and retain the people we need. It's about money. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Anybody else? Richard?
Thank you, Chair. I have two points. The first one is probably a simple one. It's on page 22, just the year-to-date figures. I was just wanting, obviously, the variances of budget to actual across the board look quite within tolerance, I would say, apart from staff support. Is there a reason as to why staff support is minus 53%, and what are those costs? That's the first question.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So the staffing underspend reflects vacancies in the quarter, and we had a high spend on recruitment costs to fill some of those vacancies. And what we tend to do with the recruitment budget is phase it evenly across the year, so it tends to be subject to peaks and troughs. But one of the key recruitment costs in the quarter was the exercise around the Rail and Roads Director, which ultimately, unfortunately, wasn't successful, so that was why we've got quite a high spend in the quarter, sorry.
Thank you. The next question, stroke observation, is I was pleased to read about the replacement of assets, i.e. rolling stock, 250 trains. I was just wanting to know or understand more about the procurement process and what Transport for the North does within that. What's the level of risk that Transport for the North takes on board, or is it just in an advisory capacity, having read, severe delays I think in the southern regions with their replacement of rolling stock and having to train drivers in the new technology, etc.
I'll share what I know on this, but there's colleagues in Rail North Partnership who will be able to provide some more detail on this for you. But it's fair to say the process for rolling stock procurement has changed quite significantly from when both Transparent and Northern were under private operator to now being under directly operated railways and coming effectively in-house. So it was previously quite a commercial deal that often took place during the franchise letting process. So you often see new rolling stock coordinated with a new contract from government. It's now changed. There's a lot more involvement from the Rail North Partnership into making a business case for that investment and specifying what type of rolling stock would be used. Still comes with risks around introduction, the requirement to train drivers, deploy those fleets, service them, maintain them, etc. All remains. But I would say, from our observations, we're closer than we have been through the Rail North Partnership than previously, and I'm sure they'd be happy to come and take you through what that process entails.
Can I just come in on that? I think the direct answer to your question is there's no risk. So there's a team within TFN called Rail North Partnership. There's 21 of them, and they work actually from the Leeds office, well actually from the Department of Transport's office in Leeds. So they're closely aligned with them, and their job is to manage the Northern and TPE franchises, or the operating companies as were that are now in the operator of last resort. So they work very closely with the department to try and shape the right outcomes holistically. But Northern and TPE are still there. So what's interesting, and back to Graham's point about context, I thought it might be quite useful to, and I was talking to Gary Bogan, who's the director of Rail North Partnership, as to whether he or one of his colleagues would come to talk a bit around what their remit is, because it's very, very far-reaching and it's very powerful because it's shaping the rail industry, which, as you're probably aware, is very fluid, but it's also very poignant to a lot of people. I mean, we're all out on the rail and we all experience it, so it's understanding what they're doing to try and influence a better environment. So I think if, so straight answer to your question is that there is no risk. We are influencing and supporting and tracking to make sure that it's done holistically in a coordinated fashion. But I think it would be useful for RMPs probably to come back and just talk you through what they do. So 21 people and a remit that budget is effectively paying for people. So there's a part of our budget which is it's about £2 million pays for the 21 people that deliver the Rail North Partnership function, in conjunction with the Rail North Committee, which met earlier in this week, which is chaired by Andy Burnham. So and Andy was quite encouraged by the way that the direction it's going. So I think there's seen to be progress. So at the Rail North Committee, you'd have the representation from Northern TP talking about their recovery plans and all the issues that they would face. So it's there's a good level of accountability and a lot of progress in that process. So I think somehow opening that up to this committee would be a good thing. So I can take that away if that's okay.
Grand, thank you. Go, Kevin.
I suppose my comments really are around the process observation, probably, in terms of this quarterly report, which we've been receiving now for a couple of years, I guess. And I guess on reflection, we probably haven't really given a great deal of scrutiny to it, if truth be told. It's been more for information. And I just wonder whether, going forward, because I think this format is working for me a bit better than the previous ones, and I like the RAG rating within it. I just wonder whether the cover report might draw the committee's attention to items of interest or that we ought to be concerned about or noting, as well as then attaching the report. Because the other observation is that the report's always lagging in terms of, and there's probably not much we can do about that. But we're now at sort of back end of quarter 2, aren't we, really? So there's that lag as well. So I just wonder whether the cover report might just pull us a little bit more up to speed and alert us to any particular issues that might be emerging in the quarter that's not being reported. Because there is a direct correlation to the risk register, isn't there, invariably within that. So I just think it's just more of an observation, I think, that might just sharpen the committee's focus going forward on these quarterly reports.
Just in response, I think it's an age-old problem about sequencing of committee meetings, board meetings, and quarterly reports. I share your view. I mean, one thing that we could consider if you'd want, I know it was only just this week that we issued the next quarter. That went out to the department. So I'm just a little unsure what date that goes out to members, but it goes out to all board members. So if the committee would want, we could probably include that as an issue at the time. So you're getting it live at the time, and it probably means more then than it would do a month or two later, if that's of use. Problem then is that obviously you're reading a quarterly operating report, but then obviously coming to a committee maybe perhaps a month or two later. But that's just the way the cycle works.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I mean, any just to pick up on Kevin's point, I think anything we can do to improve the currency of the information we get is going to be embraced, isn't it? I mean, it's not I guess the challenge is that we're circulating reports that have gone through their own governance as published reports as part of the committee pack. We don't have to do that if we don't want to. We can issue informal documents to committee that don't have to be part of that formal governance, perhaps, if that helps. I don't know. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Grand. Thank you. Anybody else? Are we good with that? I just on the RAG, everybody else seems to like it, so it's probably right for me to say that I might not. So the rag with the milestones, whether this is accidental or not, it reads as if we're focusing solely on whether something's likely to hit a date rather than whether it's under any other sort of pressure, whether there is a threat which is sort of non-time related, the relevancy point, I suppose. So I guess just a challenge back, just because something might be on time, if it's no longer relevant, why should it be green? Would be. I'm not saying there is anything that's not relevant. That's for you to tell us about. But yeah, it just seemed a little bit skewed to me. But as I've said before, I like the quarterly operating report because that exec summary at the beginning provides the sort of, albeit slightly dated, context. And thank you for your invitation, your offer rather, with regard to Rail North Partnership. As part of that, and I can't think, Daniela, without stuff in front of me, but if there is anything from the risk register that speaks to Rail North Partnership, or Alex, if there's anything that we've done in respect of audit work, if we could sort of wrap that up, Richard, that might provide a more fulsome explanation as to what 21 people do for £2 million. Excellent. Good. Thank you for that. I think, Julie, you're picking up annual governance statement, and we've neglected, I think, to do something that we spoke about doing in point 1, which is to give some background to the work that's going on regarding committee membership. Did we forget to do that?
We can do that now, Chair.
Does that kind of feed into point 6? It does in a roundabout sort of way, doesn't it? Yes. So, Julie, over to you.
Yeah, so just in terms of the membership of the committee, Chair, as you know, we have 6 seats for the elected members on the committee. Because of the fact we weren't able to have a board meeting in June, because of the election and the sort of uncertainty that put forward, we hadn't at that stage appointed any further members to the committee. We've got 2 elected members who have carried over from last time, but 4 vacancies. So with effect from board, which will take place a week on Monday on the 16th of September, we will at that stage have 4 further members being put forward to be on the committee, and hopefully that should give us some more robustness in terms of quoracy and members able to attend meetings going forward. We already know at the moment from what we've said this morning that Stuart Green will be taking over from Kevin Brady in terms of the independent member with effect from the next meeting. With the inability of Joe Reid to be able to attend future meetings, then we'll be looking at the recruitment process for another independent member to take her place, and we'll be bringing that forward in due course. So does that help on the point you want to cover, Chair?
Yes. Sorry, with the addition that we are shy of a vice chair with Joe standing down, so we can maybe have some offline conversations about whether Stephen, Stuart, Richard, you are give some further consideration to that role, because it is important for the functioning of the committee. So we can pick that up. Thank you.
So yes then, Chair, just to speak to the main report. It's quite a short, informative report outlining the future preparation process for the annual governance statement for the financial year 24-25. Hopefully, this should be quite straightforward. As the report says, as we know, the 2015 regulations provide that TFN has to carry out an annual review of the effectiveness of its system of internal controls, and it has to publish that as part of its annual governance statement. And that in turn is included within the statement of accounts, which is published according to the legislative timetable. The system of internal controls comprises all the measures taken together which TFN has got in place to safeguard the public purse and to ensure value for money. And included within that are the financial regulations, the contract procurement rules, which are contained in the Constitution, together with the risk management framework, which we use to ensure that our operations are managed and identified, and all of the internal and external audit functions, plus the oversight exercised by this committee. So we're talking in this report about the 2024-25 document, which is included in the year following the year that it relates to, and the approval deadline for the 2024-25 year is usually the 30th of September, so that would be the 30th of September 2025, but because of a backlog in the audit processes, which is countrywide, the expectation is currently that this would be extended to the 27th of February 2026. So that would be the date when the annual governance statement will be formally signed off and published, but the majority of the work would be expected to be delivered by the end of the 2024-25 financial year. We're required to comply with the guidance that SIPFA provides in its delivering good governance guidance, and we'll assess the activities against those 7 principles of good governance and provide evidence. The work will be led by the legal team in liaison with senior officers across TFN and our OBT management board, which includes Paul as financial director and me as part of that. So what we'll do is to provide a further update at the next meeting of this committee in December. Just by way of clarification, regarding the annual governance statement, which will go with the current set of accounts, that's 23 to 24, we've already looked at the format of that and the content. We've renewed and enhanced it over recent months, and that has included more information on partnership arrangements, key governance issues, and corporate governance continuous improvement plan, which continues to be work in process. Because the AGS and successive versions of it continue to be and will continue to be a live document. We're going to be piloting the reviewing of the document as our senior management team and operating board quarterly meetings, and any changes and improvements that arise from that will be tracked and reported as relevant. We have been informed that the current accounts will need to be presented to December board, so accordingly on the 6th of December the proposed final version of the AGS and accounts for 23-24, current one, will be presented to Audit and Governance Committee for approval, along with this year's statutory accounts for board, and then that will also be along with the further progress report on the 2024 work and the draft AGS for that year. So I hope that makes sense. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer those. If there's anything I'm not able to, then Paul may be able to assist on that. So thank you, Chair.
Julie, can I just come in and just perhaps turn it round a slightly different way? Is that so? Our year end is the end is March, 31st of March. Within 2 months, we've got to produce a draft set of accounts that contain our AGS. They are draft. They are subject to audit. Touch wood and touch everything else. We are a relatively straightforward business. Everyone would hope that the audit should offer a clean audit report. If it does, then the accounts are then formally approved and signed. But one would hope, and that's generally been the case. There have been a few exceptions, but generally is what we issue as draft accounts 2 months after the year tend to be the substantially or materially the accounts that get produced when they are formally signed off by the board. There are a couple of exceptions. Last year we had the issue about the pension report, the pension update, which I can go into under separate cover if people would like. So there could be reasons why they modify, but the AGS, which is the annual governance statement, doesn't tend to change from the draft statement that's produced 2 months after the end of the year. Due to the cycle, in December we will see the March 24 accounts being presented with the AGS for that year, plus also we'll see the submission for the future year also. So I suppose it's a strange committee meeting as a consequence of the timing of both the production of the accounts and our intention to try and front load the production of the AGS.
Grant, thank you. So in terms of the AGS, you said it's substantially already written and has been for some time. You're not expecting any changes between now and the next committee meeting, I presume?
No, the draft accounts, so the version of the AGS that's in the draft accounts that are going to be subject to audit, that's what we would bring back for approval in December. So it's, but to the extent there are any changes, we'll highlight them. That's what we normally try to do. In fact, that's normally what we do. We'd highlight any track changes associated to the whole document and tease those out into the cover reports, because with a 60 or 70 page set of accounts, really what you want to be doing is focusing on the 1 or 2 areas that are critical and relate to change.
Great, thank you. Comments from members on that? You okay? Richard.
Thank you, Chair. It's merely a comment to thank legal for their work on the AGS, the enhancements and the processes going forward. In my view, the AGS can be an end-of-year tick list, which is done in isolation, mainly someone from legal. Sometimes the head of audit will drive that, but it does need, or it is a lot more intuitive document, a more valuable document when senior officers of the organisation have had an input into it, and through that input you can often find some areas for improvement, hence the continuous improvement aspect of the AGS, because governance is a complex beast. It's made up of lots of policies, procedures. It's also culture and ethics. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. But I think through this, this continuous review does help identify potentially areas of policy which people either do not understand or just disregard. So it is a really useful process. And for me, from an audit background, the AGS process, if it's done throughout the year, really helps inform the audit plan as well. So there are lots of benefits to it. Just basically for the record, I'm fully behind the enhancements and the future way of working on this.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, go ahead.
Richard, it's exactly what you just said. That's exactly why we're doing it. It's how to bring it to life in the organisation, because I think it will drive change. I think the key thing is it's not fixed in stone, it's fairly well defined because you are set by certain standards, but there is scope to improve and develop, and that's what we've done. And I'd like to go on record, and the work done by Joanne, who works for Julie, has been great. And again, there's areas that spin off in terms of like skills audit and enhancements to make sure that the members are better equipped. So you can immediately see changes that have been introduced as a consequence of a strong governance environment. But yeah.
Grant, thanks, Richard. Okay. Super. Right. So the next item on the agenda is for Stephen, which is skills audit and competency framework. I guess this is it's connected obviously to that annual governance review process. It's I think particularly important. I think the ambition for any committee is to be high performing. Why wouldn't it be? And this is the idea of understanding where we are in terms of gaps with regard to skills is a key part of that. So Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've probably covered, I guess, the key objectives of a skills audit in that helpful summary. The paper that's in front of you was to consider today was obviously following on from the approval of the competency framework for the AGC at the July meeting. On the back of that, we've with sort of help and guidance and support from both Graham and Kevin, looked to develop a skills audit survey tool, which is included in Appendix 1 of the report. The intention is that we look to, subject to approval of that audit tool today, roll that out to all committee members to complete that audit process, sort of through the early autumn. The intention then being to collate the results from that audit, present that back to the next committee meeting in December, alongside a proposed training plan to look in terms of supporting the ongoing sort of development of the competency and capability of the collective membership of the members across the group. I guess I'll perhaps leave it there, and if anyone has any questions on the paper or the tool as currently drafted.
Over to members, if you have any comments or thoughts.
Just looking at the revised version, I did wonder whether we could find some space somewhere to reflect folk who may have significant or other NED experience, non-executive director and or independent member committee experience. There's reference to committee experience, I think, in section 12, but not sort of board experience. So I just wondered whether we could capture that in the earlier part of the questionnaire around management and leadership, whether that could be expanded.
So non-TFN committee experience.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think particularly non-executive roles with boards and or with committees. Yeah. I just wonder whether section 3, it might work in there. We just have another bullet. Otherwise, it just feels as though it's loaded towards organisational management from an executive perspective rather than non-executive.
No, it's no, I get it. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. That's certainly something we can add an additional question to capture that experience before we roll it out. That'll be a relatively straightforward amendment to make to the survey tool.
So when would members expect to see the next?
So we'll wait till after the board meeting on the 16th, because that will approve additional members to join this group. So shortly after that, we can expect to get the survey out. We should give around about 6 weeks for members to complete it. So we're looking at a completion date by the end of October. So then it gives us time to then analyse the results and to design a suitable training plan to bring back to the December meeting.
Got it. Perfect. Good plan. Okay. Yeah. The only. It's not so much a challenge, I guess, but just. We perhaps need to make sure that we're not overly focused on filling gaps. Equally focused on making sure that we play to people's strengths, because the gap might not matter if somebody else brings a particular strength to just in terms of training and how we prioritise training.
Absolutely, and it may well be dependent on what the results sort of show, that it may not even necessarily be appropriate to train members of the in that particular gap, it may well be that we identify that the need to co-opt for certain items or certain things that are being considered by the committee. Think about the additional attendance from another officer or subject matter expert on a particular area. So it's getting that balance between training and membership.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to fill all my gaps,
No.
and that's just me. Yeah, I think what audit folk have always done, anybody who's involved in assurance has always placed reliance on the work that other people have done, and that's a particular skill, getting that right. And I think as committee members, we have to do the same. But yeah, you need to know where those skills are, and that's exactly what the tool and the process is designed to do. Grand. Thank you, Stephen. Right, my favourite bit, Alex. Internal update, please. Over to you.
Just missed that. Just take you through the progress report. We're comfortable with where we are in terms of delivering the audit plan, and as you'll see within Appendix A, we have set timescales. Obviously, you've had the follow-up report presented at the last committee, and one report in draft, and one review in progress, and we've got dates set for the future audits that are due to come. In terms of performance, obviously we've only had one review so far, but we've had good engagement in terms of scoping the audits, and obviously I guess in terms of the areas, making sure we've got engagement across the teams to make sure we have an understanding, particularly as there are new areas that we've looked at. You know, we're looking obviously at the offering and services, as Paul mentioned earlier in the session today. I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have on the progress paper at this point in time.
No? I think, oh, sorry, Richard. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one question and one observation, and forgive me because I'm normally on the receiving end of questions like this when I'm at my audit committee, but so 21 out of 23 actions are complete. Would just be interesting to know what the two are that aren't complete and how significant they are. And the other observation, I suppose, which I was glad to see the substantial assurance report. It does have some flags there, so I was surprised. And there's no right or wrong to this, but I was surprised there was absolutely no agreed actions, low, medium or high. I would expect them to be probably low actions if you're giving a substantial rating, but I've not seen a report which has got absolutely zero actions, especially low ones where there's been flags raised. So that's the second question.
Thank you very much. No, really good question. So thank you. In terms of the follow-up report, the paper was presented at the last meeting, and there were two actions that were outstanding. One was in regards to the IT access management security audit, and we identified that progress had been made. We've got a revised action date of the 31st of December in regards to that one, so it was around a third-party register for that particular one. And the second one, again, that was a medium action regards to the procurement value for money review, and that was around the waiver process. And again, 31st of December implementation date has been agreed. So both of them are identified as part implemented, but needed some further work. We will follow those actions up as part of the next follow-up to make sure that they've been embedded. I'm happy, as I said, if you want to see the detail again, we can just make sure you've got the full report, because it does give the context of where that partial implementation is. If you're happy for me to move on to the performance management report, I will just pull out the key points. As I said, in terms of the overall opinion is a positive opinion, and as you said quite rightly, there are no actions included. What we have done is obviously benchmarking against other organisations, as we do with any review, and speak to management around the processes that are in place and whether there are any enhancements. As an auditor, I agree, you check and challenge in terms of where there are actions, and what we did find from our sample testing in terms of the appraisals, the inductions and policies and procedures, everything had followed the correct process. There was the timely completion and recording and capturing of obviously training where applicable, particularly external training. Quite rightly, in terms of these typical reviews, we do often see that appraisals haven't met the timescales and haven't necessarily followed the policy. So that's where we do tend to find some of the actions. But on our sample testing, there were no issues in terms of compliance with the policy. The areas that we've included, as you said, is in terms of the flags. They are benchmarking with done enhancements that we think may be considered, but we've not, as I said, found any concerns in terms of the approach, and recognising the size and scale of the organisation as well. There are enhancements to consider, and we've obviously gone through the discussion around that benchmarking and whether they're suitable and they can be taken forward as part of that. But no, as I said, from the sample testing we've done, there was that compliance and understanding of the process to be followed for appraisals, and it's taken, it forms part of the performance of individuals.
Just add to that, in terms of the first flag or recommendation in there, in terms of the calibration, in terms of making sure that was documented, that suggestion has been fully implemented. So a formal record of audit of calibration does take place now. So that enhancement was, although it wasn't a formal recommendation, has been adopted. In terms of the two other blue flags that are in there, we do report by exception in terms of if there were any issues in relation to any skills gaps, and similarly in terms of the final recommendation that was there in terms of reporting through to SMT.
Grand. Points, questions, thoughts? Kevin?
Yeah, just on that last point, I mean, certainly my experience has been in large organisations and medium-sized that annual performance appraisal processes would be reported to senior management. I just find it odd, really, that senior management or a board would not be interested in the outcomes of a performance appraisal process. So I'm just slightly sort of taking issue with given the size and scale of the organisation element within your report, because I don't feel that that's really relevant. I just feel it should be part of a good practice and good and reporting processes that should be certainly seen by senior management, and probably should be reported to the board. It's just personal opinion, actually. Just find it odd, really, that it wouldn't be. It's a critical part of performance management within any organisation.
Sorry, Chair, I think I've confused. Are you saying which bit of the report?
The final flag, the last flag, the last blue flag, as such, and I'm responding to Stephen's. He's indicated it would be reported by exception, if I've understood it.
Yeah, just to confirm, if anybody is going through a formal performance procedure, that is reported through to the operating board. So in terms of our performance management procedure, that is reported through to our operating board. In terms of non-compliance with appraisals, It's a mandatory requirement for every individual to go for an annual appraisal process, and there's been 100% compliance with that over the lifetime of that process. So when I say by exception, that's because there's not been non-compliance with the completion of the annual appraisal process. But the point could be noted that we could actually, in that operating report, just confirm that there's been a continued 100% completion of the annual appraisal process. It's a relatively easy thing for us to implement.
Are you suggesting the main board, or are you suggesting the operating board, as in the executive board? Because it does go to executive board. We are aware of what goes on. They do see all the they don't see the individual appraisals, but they see the overall delivery of them. And there is also there's a report from HR that's taken to every meeting. Every month there's a report. Now, you know, we could tag onto that one report for the half year and the full year to demonstrate the full compliance, just to give us, I suppose, the overarching view. That would be a relatively easy thing to do. But I think we kind of get it through a secondary medium, which is we're all encouraged as individual members to make sure everyone in our teams is appraised. So there's I suppose it's a separate assurance process, but I think for it to come into a holistic process probably makes some sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Are you intending to say anything about standards?
If you, just in terms of the paper that you have, I'll take it as read, but it just highlights the global internal audit standards that obviously will be introduced in January 25, and I guess it does link into some of the discussions I've had around the skills audit that's been undertaken. This particular paper, and we've been sharing ones throughout the last couple of months, just focuses on the communications and the key stakeholder engagement that's required. So all it does is set out I guess the requirements and the conditions, and also puts forward some questions for the committee to think about in terms of the engagement that you have in terms of the internal audit services and the coverage that you have. So it does link quite nicely into, I guess, the skills audit and the work we do. But I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have on that, which more for information purposes at this stage.
Grant, I've got a question for you. So, one of the points that when I met with Martin the other week, it was a bit of a download because I had a list of questions, and he did as well. And one of the specific questions he asked me was, did I feel that audit was suitably independent of management? Which I wasn't expecting him to ask, because it hadn't struck me in the last 2 or 3 years as a particular issue or concern, but it was interesting that he asked it. And when you read the standards, obviously there is a significant emphasis on independence and demonstrating independence. And then you read further in the standards and there's an emphasis on how does the committee gain assurance themselves that the environment within which you're operating in is suitable and appropriate. And I just thought it was a good challenge for all of us, really, in, you know, to take Richard's point about the actions. as an example, you provide visibility of the audit activity, and we have an opportunity to influence and comment on the audit plan. But we don't necessarily see a lot of the detail that sits behind that. So for example, you've got management have got two outstanding actions. What are management doing about those? What visibility does management get of those actions? It's not your job to follow them up and do something about them. They sit with management. And then there's the point about, does the committee have the opportunity, does the committee take the opportunity on a regular basis to formally discuss the role of internal audit, the charter, the nature of that independence? And I'm not entirely sure that we do. I think there's more we could do, potentially. So my question to you is, if there's anything that you see elsewhere, because obviously one of the big advantages of having you from external is that you have that slightly different perspective, so broader perspective. So if there are examples of where you think an audit committee, or Richard as well, where you think an audit committee is actively considering the mandate of internal audit and how it operates, that might be something that's worth bringing back to this forum, because I'm not entirely sure how we would look to tick that box at the moment. Does that make sense?
Thank you. No, it's a really good question. I think, when we're talking about the role of internal audit and then, like you said, the independency, I think looking back over the period we've provided internal audit and thinking obviously on the starting journey, I think the audit plan, if you look at it compared to a couple of years ago, the areas have started to evolve in terms of the risks and we're looking at TAME, we're looking at the offer, and it started to really bring in some of those key areas that actually the functions of TFN. And I think I've certainly seen the engagement from committee members and the emphasis in terms of internal control and assurance. I've seen a step change, I think, in terms of the understanding and how that contributes. Obviously, in terms of risk, I think still further journeys in terms of what comes out. You've obviously got the skills in terms of individuals that are involved, like Richard, in terms of internal audit as well. So you look at it from a different lens. There's obviously that opportunity, Graham, for pre-meets as well, through prior to committees to talk through any of our papers, and also through the client briefings as well. If there's anything that you feel, what we do see sometimes as part of committees is having an update, like I said, on the standards, and in these briefings that I actually think are pertinent that we can talk through as well. But they're things that just outlined now, but obviously I'm more than happy to just take away if I think of anything that we think can help to shape it, move forward. But the charter does form part of your audit plan, and again that just set our roles and responsibilities, so again we can make sure everyone's comfortable when that comes through as part of the audit plan in terms of roles, and just reflect in terms of the effectiveness of the committee and fulfilling the role of the committee as well. Yeah, grand. Thank you. Yeah, I just wonder whether there's a specific question that could be posed as part of the annual governance statement in terms of, obviously that's increasingly evidence-based in terms of how we demonstrate good governance. Maybe there's a specific question we can put in the governance statement around audit standards and how we seek to comply with them. If you can capture that, Andrea, just as a specific, otherwise I will forget. Grand. Is that you done, Alex? Brilliant.
Can I just come back with one?
Of course you can.
I mean, just so members are aware now, we're about to embark on the cycle of planning for next year, actually. So, obviously Alex has updated the progress in relation to the plan for this year, but behind the scenes we do need to develop the areas to focus on for well, for the foreseeable future, whether that's 1 or 2 or 3 years. You know, it doesn't. You know, there's no requirement just to plan for 1 year. So we will engage with you in that. So it's a chance to influence the scope for next year. It's a there's no set way to do this one. So I think what we would probably like to do is in conjunction with Alex is to tease out some of the more obvious areas that we might want to look at. There's been a definite shift this year to operational areas away from the sort of the more structured control-based reviews that were done previously. So I think there's a balance required there. So I think we can probably achieve both review of the control environment, but also are we delivering against our longer-term objectives in terms of the activity. So I think probably hopefully we'll bring something back to you next meeting, and that's an opportunity then to feed in your views about whether it's ticking the right boxes or not.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be quiet in a minute. The thing about independence, I think we can perhaps sometimes assume that something is independent without necessarily testing it, just because of how it's positioned. Obviously, it's outside the organisation, therefore it must be independent. I mean, that's a pretty weak, potentially weak conclusion. I'll shut up now.
Chairman,
sorry.
I mean, what would the chair...
Yeah, it's. I mean, just getting an auditor in front of you and asking them the direct question: do you feel influenced by management in anything that could be in a? You know, that's it's important that we do that without assuming that folk are independent or feel independent.
I think equally, if it's felt that that's more comfortable to done without the executive being in attendance, then please do that. That's you know, we try to create the environment whereby, you know, internal and external audits have got seats around the table to have an independent voice. But if you'd like to validate that separately, then we'll be more than comfortable. I think we talked about that happening last time. As if people wanted to speak to either the internal audit or external audit just to get their private but independent views, please do that. Would actively support it.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. So, Daniel, when I said internal audit was my favourite, obviously I didn't mean that you weren't. So, an external audit update, please.
Thanks, Chair. I take no offence whatsoever. Paul's just asked me to give you a brief update, really. As Julie alluded to earlier, there's some changes coming in terms of the time frame and time scales for external audit moving forwards, and that is a reflection of the backlog in the wider local audit sector at the moment. So members may be aware from their wider roles that there's quite a number of authorities out there that aren't in the same position as Transport for the North and have a number of years worth of accounts and audits open going backwards, whereas Transport for the North just got the current year audit. So traditionally you would produce your accounts by the end of May, and we would audit them before COVID by the end of July, since COVID the end of September. There is a recognition amongst government that it can't go on, there's been a local backlog, because it means it's delaying everybody's audit rather than getting things back on track. So the previous government, before the election, started a consultation on how to put this right. And since the new government came in post-election, the new Minister of State issued a statement at the start of August setting out the principles for how that will work going forwards. So what that will mean is, for the next 5 years, there will be a series of deadlines for completing the external audit. Unlike previously, if that deadline's reached and the accounts aren't finished, auditors will be required to issue a modified audit opinion on that set of accounts. So rather than just continuing on the audit as we have done previously, it get to essentially draw a line in the sand and either say we've not done any work on this set of accounts, or these are the areas of the accounts that we have done work on, these are the areas that we can't give assurance on. For old years accounts, so that's up until 22-23, that is the plan to be the 13th of December this year. For 23-24, that will be the end of February next year. And for 24-25, that will be February the year after. Then it comes forward a couple of months every year till it gets back to September. Alongside that, the deadline for production of the draft accounts will change, so it will no longer be May, it will be the end of June, to give practitioners more time to actually put together a set of accounts, because, and this isn't a comment on Transport North, it's just the wider sector, there has been some recognition that the earlier deadline has caused more errors in sets of accounts nationally, because there's less time to produce the accounts, so there's less perfect information. So that's the direction of travel. What does that mean for Transport for the North? Well, we've already got the audit for this year planned in for September through to the end of September through to the end of November. So as Paul said, we'll be bringing the audit completion report, the final set of accounts, to the next Audit and Governance Committee meeting. So that's well in advance of the February deadline. So there's no issues in terms of Transport for the North in getting this year's audit done, and then we'll work with Paul and the finance team on how we programme that in light of the new deadlines going forwards. Those deadlines still do have to go through Parliament. There's legislation that has to be laid before Parliament, so until that's in place, it's one of those things that we're almost working to a moving feast at the moment, but the Minister's now set out his intentions, which is helpful in framing that sort of resource planning for us as an audit firm, but also jointly with finance teams going forward. So no risk in terms of Transport for the North. As Paul said, it's usually, touch wood, a fairly simple audit for us compared to some of our more complex local authorities. So we will be bringing our audit completion report and our findings on the value for money arrangements to the next committee. So that's well in advance of the February deadline, but happy to take any questions on that process.
Thank you. Any question? So the point that was needing to be addressed in relation to pensions and pension provisions was obviously a delaying factor. Is that something that is likely to re-emerge? Is that done and dusted, or?
So we actually started the pension fund audit back in July, start of July. It's almost complete now, so it's pretty much complete before we started this audit, so there shouldn't be any delays coming out of that for this year. Obviously it's something he's looking at in future years, but we always try and prioritise the pension fund, knowing that every other audit relies on that one being complete, so it's always the first in the queue to get done, so that we try not to run into those issues. So yeah, shouldn't be an issue going forwards.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Daniel. I'm not sure we've ever finished before 12:30 before, but I don't think we should take that as a measure of us not doing our work. So I think that substantially is the end of the agenda. We've said goodbye to Kevin. We've said hello to Stuart. I think your gift is actually on the pavement outside, Kevin, when we go downstairs. So the date of the next meeting, I have it as the 6th of December, and I think, Julie, the current thinking is that will be in person. Correct.
It says on the agenda that it's 5 teams, but I think Julie and I will just talk behind the scenes as to whether that needs to be flipped, because it's the approval of the accounts, whether we actually need to be in person or not. But we can just clarify that behind the scenes, if that's okay. In the next week, probably.
Grand. And there is nobody from Audit and Governance Committee at the board meeting on the 16th of September.
No, but they would need to be there on the 15th of December, post the accounts approval. That's when we would submit the AG report.
Excellent. Good. Everybody happy? Splendid. Thank you all for your attendance and your contribution. Again, goodbye to Kevin. I'm struggling with my emotions, actually, Kevin. But, anyway, grand, super. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see most of you on 6th of December. Thank you.
Cheers all.